Take an average day in a most unaverage city, a metropolis that's not quite like any other, New Orleans. You can climb aboard a bus or a streetcar, or a noble stern-wheeler churning the waters of the Mississippi River. Either way, you'll be heading toward a destination filled with 1,000 surprises. After your excursion, you'll find yourself at the entrance to a world within a world, home to wildlife of every size, shape, and stripe. Welcome to the world-class, one-of-a-kind Audubon Zoological Garden. A new zoo in New Orleans. This new zoo actually has a history dating back to the late 1800s. Its 58 acres are incorporated in the sprawling Audubon Park, designed by John Charles Olmsted, whose father was responsible for New York's Central Park. Olmsted's design broke up the site's flat terrain with extensive landscaping encompassing a series of dramatic lagoons. The zoo grew steadily through the 1930s, but then declined into what the New York Times eventually described as an animal ghetto. It was the people of New Orleans who in the 1970s rallied to support a vastly improved zoo facility. 3 separate times they voted to finance the transformation of their animal ghetto into what has since been described as an urban Eden, a new standard for everything a modern zoo can and needs to be. In this new Audubon Zoo, cages have been replaced by open, naturalistic enclosures. Barriers have been cleverly designed so as to be practically invisible, giving visitors unobstructed views of the exhibits. The animals have been arranged primarily by geographic origin. They are displayed in areas like the African savanna, the Asian domain, and the Australian outback. Different animals are often housed together in mixed exhibits. The South American pampas features rheas, tapirs, and capybaras peacefully coexisting as they would in the wild. Well, most of the time it's peaceful. The most unusual feature of the Audubon Zoo is the Louisiana Swamp exhibit. An artfully designed network of lagoons and bayous gives visitors an up-close look at an authentic swamp. In fact, workers like Rick Atkinson spend much of their time making sure the swamp doesn't get too authentic.
It's quite a job down here in a semi-tropical climate like Louisiana, in an area that used to be a cypress swamp. The vegetation grows thick and fast. We have the imported water hyacinths over here, and this alligator weed, which is a native. In fact, we kind of joke about the vegetation of the month out here. We always have something. This year, it seems to be all this duckweed, an interesting plant, a little tiny plant, the smallest of the flowering plants, but it's gotten out of hand this year, and we're having quite a job netting it and pulling it to the side and removing it.
The weeding is all done manually to avoid having to use chemicals that might harm the animals. The animal most identified with the Louisiana swamp is the alligator. But this exhibit features animals you might not expect, such as the black bear. Black bears are now rare in Louisiana, but they used to be common near swamps. Since they are living in a temperate climate with a plentiful year-round food supply, these bears, unlike their northern counterparts, do not hibernate during the winter. In the summer, they venture into the refreshing coolness of the swamp waters. At a special viewing area, visitors get an underwater look at the antics of river otters. Although their populations have declined dramatically throughout much of the United States, they are still plentiful in Louisiana. In the wild, the red fox is found in wooded areas surrounding swamps. The zoo has set up this red fox display on the edge of its swamp exhibit. A swamp is one of nature's most untamed environments, filled with sights and sounds that have spawned countless myths, stories, and legends. Yet over the years, swamps have also supported generations of human residents. And Audubon's award-winning design includes evidence of their unlikely presence in these murky homelands.
Cajuns and other swamp dwellers had to pursue a variety of activities to make a living in the Louisiana swamps. One of those activities was collecting Spanish moss. They would pile it up into a mound to decompose and then hang it on a line to dry in order to get to this black fibrous material inside. This material was used to stuff car seats, mattresses, and furniture of all sorts.
Throughout Louisiana, wetlands are disappearing at the rate of 1 acre every 14 minutes. Here, the nation's only man-made swamp is a microcosm of those watery worlds that are home to countless wildlife species. The king of the swamp is a descendant of prehistoric reptiles. An alligator's metabolism shuts down in the winter and it doesn't eat. But by mid-spring, watch out. Alligators are ready to make up for lost time. For the over 1,200 other animals throughout the zoo, eating is a year-round proposition. Since each has a different nutritional need, feeding is a tremendous undertaking. The types of food today's modern zoo dietitians have on hand run the gamut from ordinary to highly specialized.
Some of these items are common, such as dog food and rabbit pellets and hen scratch. Some of these items, however, are specifically formulated for zoo exotics. For example, we have monkey chows, both a high protein and a low protein monkey chow. We also have specialty products for rat tights, which are large flightless birds like the rheas, the emus, the ostriches. We have omnivore chow for the bears. We even have a specialty product milled for sea turtles. It's a modified trout chow for sea turtles.
Mark takes pride in using only the freshest ingredients. Besides the usual produce items, the commissary goes through 15,000 crickets a week and almost 30,000 mealworms. And Mark makes sure that all the animals get enough vitamins.
Some of the animals, like the red wolves, require a liquid vitamin that is mixed in with their diet. Some of the animals get a powdered vitamin mineral supplement that's just sprinkled on top of their diet. And other ones, like the primates, just get a regular kid's chewable vitamins like you would give to your children. Some of the animals, though, require a little trickery. We have to actually take their vitamin mineral pill and hide it inside the fish. And we do this because they won't accept it any other way, and if they see the tablet, they'll pick it out and throw it away.
It's hard to get a wild animal to brush after eating. So to help keep their teeth clean, a number of the larger animals are given bones once a week.
Hey, Tony, open up, big boy. Come on. Come on.
In a new zoo like Audubon, the animal keepers don't merely keep the animals, they get to know what makes them happy. To help them stay happy and healthy year-round, veterinarian Sue Wells gives many of the animals regular physicals. And whether her patients are large or small, Dr. Wells always seems to have her hands full.
These little bat-eared foxes were born 7 weeks ago. It's time for them to get their first vaccination. Let me go ahead and give one of them to Kelly here. Let's see. Do you have the boy or the girl? Okay, let's see what you weigh. Hold still. He's 2.5 pounds. That's great. He's 7 weeks old now. He's really grown a lot. He was only about 120 grams when he was born. The annual physical allows us to evaluate their general health status and determine any problems they may be having. And it really reflects, I think, the improvement in veterinary care in zoos today. There is much more interest in maintaining the health of these animals because of the value of some of the species and their irreplaceability because of their precarious status in the wild.
The effort to make sure the zoo's residents are healthy extends to providing a healthy environment. As much as possible, each animal's native habitat is recreated. Whether it's for an Australian tawny frogmouth or a Malayan sun bear, this attention to detail demonstrates the zoo's concern not only for the animal's physical well-being, but for their mental health as well.
Boredom can be a very serious problem for zoo animals. One of the things that zookeepers try and do is what we call rearranging the furniture in the exhibits. After the animals spend 365 days a year in the same exhibit, they know every inch of it. So part of our responsibility is to move the furniture around. Furniture can be rotten logs, rocks, stones, new plant material, anything to break up their path, to break up the exhibit.
The sun bears, having waited patiently, wonder what these humans have done to their home. Now they're introduced to their new decor. The bears begin by taking a cautious look around. Then they explore the new lay of their land. A few careful sniffs, a little poking and pawing. And the process of settling into their new digs begins. In a zoo, the kind of furniture that needs moving around provides a special challenge to the staff's exterior decorators.
We try to find plants that are tough and can take the abuse the animals are going to give them. In some cases, like in the sun bear exhibit in Asian domain, we put in bollards to prevent the bears from rolling on the ginger that was placed there. In other cases, to keep the animals off the root systems or actually away from the trunk of the plants, we might use oak limbs or we might use netting, just whatever works for that particular animal.
Audubon's success as a beautiful, innovative new zoo has only been possible through the enthusiastic support of the people of New Orleans. In fact, Audubon's Friends of the Zoo is the largest per capita organization of its kind in the country. An example of this support occurred when Suri, a white tiger, was loaned to New Orleans by the Cincinnati Zoo. People in the community fell so much in love with her that they raised an extraordinary $200,000 to provide her a permanent home here at Audubon. Suri continues to be one of the zoo's star attractions. The star attraction of zoo fundraising events has to be the Zoo to Do. 90 of New Orleans' finest restaurants turn the zoo into a culinary mecca during this annual formal gala. The relationship between the zoo and the community is a two-way street. while the Zoo to Do brings the community into the zoo. The traveling zoomobile takes the zoo out into the community. By bringing animals to schools and nursing homes, the zoo makes a continuing effort to give something special to the citizens of New Orleans.
He looks so soft. He's not so. She's very small. She's cute. Yeah, she is.
She's only smelling me with her tongue, see? Tickle.
Here back at Audubon, on weekends you'll frequently encounter the zookeepers of tomorrow. Members of the highly popular Junior Keeper program spend their free time teaching visitors about different animals. Today, it's Betty the Burmese python.
She's about 70 pounds, so she's a little hard to handle. And she's about 10 feet long, so she's really long. She's bigger than you are.
Not all youngsters are this bold.
Oh.
Okay, let's go.
For the more cautious, Wisner Children's Village also offers other ways to get close to the animals. There's nothing quite like a prairie dog's eye view of the world. Prairie dogs live in small structured communities called coteries. They post sentries who watch for signs of impending danger, then sound the alarm. Siamangs have throat pouches that inflate much like those on bullfrogs. The result is a call which makes a small family of Siamangs sound like an entire army. The call has to penetrate the thick jungle canopy of Southeast Asia, where Siamangs reside. Siamangs are endangered in the wild, but here they are adding to their numbers, as are many of Audubon's animals. Because so many of today's animals are endangered, modern zoos avoid taking them from the wild. Audubon is one of the leaders in wildlife research and breeding. Some of its greatest successes have come in the bird department, including the first toucan barbet born anywhere in captivity, and the first captive breeding of the reclusive rhino hornbill. For Fred and Ethel Hornbill, the zoo provided a specially fitted barrel to accommodate their unusual private nesting needs. This exclusive footage was taken after Ethel broke out of the nest. Earlier, she had walled herself into the barrel to lay and incubate her egg. Fred had to feed her through a small hole, just as he's feeding the chick now. The chick will stay in the nest for several more weeks. The rhino hornbills are kept off exhibit. They need privacy to breed, away from people and other birds. Flamingos, on the other hand, thrive in crowds. The larger the flock, the more productive they seem to become. This is one of the largest breeding flocks of flamingos in the country.
We currently have 68 birds in our flock. About half of those birds have been raised here from our birds since 1975. In the last few years, we've been bringing in small groups of birds from other zoos. When we raise enough chicks, we'll be sending chicks back to those zoos to stock their exhibits. It's a cooperative effort among zoos to help make the most of the animals that we have in captivity.
Peter spends much of his spare time watching the flamingos, noting their every move. He carefully keeps track of each bird's location, nesting activity, and behavior. Throughout the zoo, research like this is leading to increased breeding successes. The howler monkeys are just starting to bring their 3-day-old baby out into the exhibit. He'll cling to mom for up to 9 months, although in about 3 months, he'll start venturing away for short periods of time. The 2 female orangutans produced 3 babies in the same year. One of them gave birth to twins. Captive primates sometimes have trouble taking care of their young, partially due to inexperience and partially due to the lack of role models for them to learn from. Keepers here are trying new methods to teach the female orangs to be better mothers. In the meantime, these 3 babies all had to be hand-raised.
When they were 2 years old, we started introducing them back to the group. And that was very, very successful. We introduced all 3 babies at the same time. The females were just wonderful. They were just so excited about having those kids back in there, and after they got used to these big red hairy things, the kids were fairly excited about being back in the group, so much so now that they don't want to come to us anymore. They want to stay with the female orangs. So we consider this one of our success stories.
Introducing hand-raised youngsters back to the group has been more difficult in the gorilla exhibit. The adult male hasn't been particularly gentle with this 2-year-old named Chicory.
He had no experience with youngsters, and to him it was a new thing in his environment, and that meant he could play with it. And since he's over 300 pounds, he has a tendency to play a little rough, especially when you're talking about a 35-pound animal.
Chicory got some relief when his mother gave birth to a son named Katambi. Besides raising Katambi, the first baby she has taken care of herself, she is also teaching the adult male how to behave around youngsters. And now Chicory has someone he can play with. Most of the newborns, like this baby tapir, are kept off exhibit until they're somewhat able to fend for themselves.
We usually feed them apples or carrots or whatever when they come up to us. This is not to make pets out of them, but it facilitates giving them medications or that sort of thing if and when we should need to. And it also makes it a little easier to move them from one area to the other.
Now at the age of 2 months, the baby tapir is being moved into the South American pampas exhibit. His stripes are nature's way of camouflaging him. He'll lose the stripes within a few months. Audubon is pioneering the research on the nocturnal Chinese pangolin. Although they're not closely related, the pangolin resembles the anteater with its long tongue and similar eating habits.
It represents a completely unique order of mammals. It is a mammal and not a reptile. There's not very much known about pangolins, and we hope that in the coming years we will be able to breed these in captivity. This is one of 2 pangolins here at Audubon Zoo that represent the only pangolins in the Western Hemisphere.
Jabiru storks are native to the Western Hemisphere, but are endangered in their Central American habitat. Their noisy clatter is part of their social display, a demonstration of affection for one another. 5 of the 6 Jabiru storks in the U.S. are here at Audubon, where the staff has begun a breeding program.
Up to this point, they've not been bred in captivity. So our first hurdle is to get 2 birds compatible together, which we've done with these 2 birds right here. They were both single birds for a long time. Hadn't seen another stork for years, but we finally established these 2 together. They have a strong pair bond. They do all the social displays that storks are supposed to do, and they've started building a nest. So we hope to get some eggs this fall, which is their normal breeding season in the wild.
Linda, what we're trying to do is see if we can determine which of them white rhinos are least related, so that we can...
Audubon helped develop a computerized record-keeping system that is used in zoos throughout the U.S. It aids breeding programs by keeping track of each animal's age, ancestry, health history, and other pertinent data. In addition, breeding of many of the endangered species is nationally administered under the Species Survival Plan. The program attempts to maintain the widest possible gene pool for these rare animals. The hope is to be able to someday release threatened species back into the wild. This has already happened with several of the zoo's golden lion tamarins, which were returned to their native Brazil. This vanishing animal symbol is used to identify the many endangered or threatened species in the zoo's collection. Pure red wolves are among the rarest animals in North America. None is known to exist in the wild. Asiatic lions are confined to a sanctuary in India, where only about 180 of these majestic creatures still survive. The ruffed lemur lives in the rainforests of Madagascar. Its population has been cut in half since 1950. Lemurs, like most of the endangered species thriving here, are in trouble because their natural habitats are disappearing. Currently, human civilization is destroying rainforests at the astounding rate of 76,000 acres a day. The sad fact is that ultimately, wilderness areas are as endangered as the life they maintain. And that means that modern zoos now form a link to survival for severely threatened species. It also means that by offering a steady stream of human visitors the chance to experience firsthand nature's many wonders, these zoos are helping generate public support for preserving what remains of the world's priceless natural heritage. Audubon Zoo has much to be proud of, but it has no intention of resting on its laurels. As more is learned about animals and their needs, the zoo will adapt and grow. Here at Audubon, being a new zoo today also means preparing to remain a new zoo tomorrow.